Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Less Stress, More Peace and Happiness Summit. I'm Janine Wooten. I'm your host. I'm so happy that you've decided to join us and invest some time in learning some really valuable skills for reducing stress and just creating more peace in your life. We have had a fantastic lineup of speakers, and today is no different. You are going to love it. I'm going to introduce you to Jaclyn Purvis. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we'll bring her on and she can share some great information with you. Jaclyn Purvis is the co-founder and next level life coach of the Be, Do, Have movement. After leaving the corporate marketing industry to follow her dreams of building a business with purpose, Jaclyn joined her business partner and father, Jamie, to grow the Be, Do, Have movement into a global name. She's an expert on all things growth strategy, mindset, goals, and habits. Jaclyn is a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, and mental and emotional release. The Be, Do, Have movement has helped over 1,000 plus ambitious professionals all around the world through their membership community, proven signature method, and high-value programs. Today, she's going to bring her expertise to us and share specifically how to go from burnout back to balance. So please welcome with me, Jaclyn Purvis.
Hi, Jaclyn. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. Good. I'm so excited to be here today.
We are really thrilled that you're here. I love because there's so much stress around work, and it sounds like that's something that you really help people with. But, burnout doesn't even have to be just work. It can be anything, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how it shows up in all different areas of our life.
That's true. Exactly. I'm excited to hear your talk. I'm going to give you front stage. I'm going to put your title up and we'll get started.
Awesome.
So please, if you don't mind, I always love to start with your personal story. Tell us the backstory, what brought you to doing this work that you're doing. And so tell us about that.
Go from there. So I got into this space because I was living actually in a state of pure stress. Flight, fight, in freeze all the time. So it was some form of anxiety that was just running and ruling my life. And I didn't know how to get out of it at that point. So I really got into this space to learn the tools for myself initially. And then I wanted to serve and help people get out of that state faster. So people that feel the way I felt have solutions for that so they can take empowered action forward. And it really started in, I think always looking back, it's really easy to connect the dots and understand, this really low period of my life was such a pivotal moment that I'm now very grateful for. But it was stepping out of a field in that corporate advertising space. I was absolutely burnt out. My body was reacting. It was no longer just tired exhaustion. I was getting physical hives from it. I couldn't control my tears. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. It was just I wasn't in a feel-good state. My body was completely out of alignment. So that is really what propelled me into the self-development world, that self-help space. And then I went down the certification route again for myself initially. And now I'm like, okay, how can I help other people with this? How can I serve based on the tools that have helped me too?
Yeah, exactly. Love it. So that's exactly what the summit's about. And we do have so many people, and it's interesting that, like you said, when you're in that dark place, you don't realize that it's actually serving you for the future. And I would say that's a common thread with a lot of the stories that other speakers have shared with us too. So sometimes people are in that space, and even if they do choose to do the work to make it through, then they don't take it to the next level and help others. And so I always want to just acknowledge people that do that and honor the work that you're doing, because that's really what it's all about, isn't it? When we learn something that helps us, we turn around and help others.
Yeah, it's funny. I really didn't do it initially because I wanted to switch careers. It just, looking back again, all the steps made sense. All the pieces kind of came together. And I was lucky enough that I was getting coached at the time as well from my father, who's now my business partner. So again, looking back, I'm very grateful that everything worked out the way it did. But it just started from being in a place that I wasn't happy with. And I think we've all been at that place at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unfortunately, I think it's part of the culture in America and probably globally that, people are just driven it sounds like you were more in a survival mode and certainly not thriving, just doing what you had to do to make it through the days. But it's part of our culture that we feel like we have to go, work those 15-hour days. And then, there's just no downtime. And it does actually take a toll, like you said, on your physical body. And sometimes it takes a while. People have to get to that point before they realize there's a problem.
And that career I was in it like fed off that energy. Like how many hours? It was never 9 to 5. It was 9 till you're done or 8 till you're done, right? Exactly. So it was built around, not to say toxic, not that every situation like that is toxic, but the place I was in definitely was. So it's great I just love that you've opened this up and are talking to people about solutions for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And being aware of it, like just stopping and thinking, you know what, this doesn't feel good. It's not right. It's not healthy. I remember a number of years back getting to the point where I can look back now and I remember thinking to myself, I feel my body is shutting down. And that's a scary feeling. I'm a good bit older than you. But so I remember thinking that and thinking like, if this stress level continues, like something, my health is just going to give. I could feel it. I could feel that it was too much. And so, you just become aware and you make those choices and then you have to do the work. So becoming aware, making the choices is one thing, but then you have to actually do the work. But
that's such a key piece.
Right.
So
and
key.
Then I think getting support, like, having someone around you to help you who has the same mindset or the same goals, which actually feeds right into your topic. But so tell us exactly like, what kind of work you do and how it helps people who are in that burnout place or the completely stressed out place. How would you start working with someone?
So I do life coaching. So a big component to that is what's not feeling good. That's usually a starting ground, right? We figure out, okay, what's not feeling good? What potential area of life does that look like? And then we look at, okay, what goals can we work towards that are a feel-good factor, that do work for you? So that's always the starting point. But a big component that's kind of different about the approach that I take with that is it's not just about achievement and that kind of hamster wheel that we can get on, right? That what's next, like go, that kind of mentality that we're brought up with. Right. As much as it's that goal, the purpose of that goal is to grow in the first place. So I want to look at, okay, what direction is important for a client? Yes. And where can we grow in that process mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? So it's very much about that being component. Who are you being along the way? And that's why we're actually called the Be Do Have movement.
I was going to ask you that. Is that where the name?
Yeah, it's tied right in.
So tell us how that evolved, the name of the business.
We realized that the approach most people take, and especially in the corporate or sales coaching space, it's very based on your goals and your numbers, which is fantastic, again, to have that tracking point. But then it's about, okay, what's the system? And then you get on that hamster wheel and you hustle till it's done. And then most people hit burnout, right? So we realized by flipping the approach to, okay, let's understand the goal, where we want to grow. And let's look at our being, let's look at our behavior. And by taking an approach to shift those mentalities first, not only are we getting to the goal that much faster, but we're changing our identity along the way so that it's long lasting, so that the behaviors, the productive habits are working for you and they're long lasting. It's consistent. You're just shifting who you are as a person along the way. And it's that much more impactful.
Yeah, definitely. So is that something that's difficult to do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary. And to break that down, you have to face yourself. And that means your fears. Right. When we say limiting beliefs, it's really fears, right? It's that little negative voice that's in all of our heads, by the way. But how much are we listening to that? And if it's a habit or a mentality or a mindset that we've been conditioned with our whole life, it's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort to break through that.
Right. So do you think, the first place would just be becoming aware of those beliefs, obviously? And then if you become aware of a limiting belief, do you literally stop your mind and say, no, thank you for participating, but that's not true, or I choose otherwise? I mean, what do you do to break the pattern, I guess, is what I'm asking.
And there's so many ways to do this. And I love that example you just gave because I always like to keep it simple. Again, there's a lot of deeper methods that do take some time and do need to be more of a one-on-one base. But I keep a Post-it note like stack at my desk. And when I catch myself thinking of something negative, I write it down on the Post-it. I grab one other Post-it and write the opposite of that. And then I actually physically rip up the negative one.
I like that.
So that act just instantly, it's like, thank you. I recognize it. I don't resonate with this. I don't need to accept this. It can just happen and I can let it go.
Right. That's a great visual too, which adds to the effectiveness, I'm sure. So you've got the physical and visual and mental, like everything is playing on a lot of levels that you're throwing that away.
Exactly. And keeping it simple. Like we don't have to complicate it. And I really got into this because of that. As I wanted to provide simple solutions, because it feels, when you're hitting burnout, it feels so overwhelming sometimes that you don't know where to start.
Exactly.
So it's just keeping it simple and really filling up ideally that everyone in the world has their own toolbox of solutions to get out of things on their own. Like that's best case scenario, right?
Right. So yeah, again, that's exactly what the summit is, because we have so many various topics and various tools, and that's exactly the goal of it, is to equip people with a toolkit. And so, some people might resonate with one method and others with another, but ultimately, obviously the goal is just to help a lot of people. I feel like the pandemic definitely had a lasting impact. I think it kind of feels like right now people are pretending everything's okay.
Yeah.
We're going through the motions again, but I feel like emotionally a lot of people are still hurting and maybe still feeling disconnected and isolated and maybe even a little bit afraid still, so certainly stressed, and there's a whole lot of social stuff that shifted. So there's just so much going on, and I love all these topics. Mindset is obviously kind of at the base of all of them. And so would you mind talking a little bit more just about the mindset component for people?
And mindset is so interesting because it can get really deep and it can get really scientific. And simply put, it's how our attitude is about a situation. So I like to look at it like it's either we're in a stuck state where it's perhaps fixed about something and we don't know what that next step is, or we're seeing a lot of negative in a situation, or there's the growth side of it where it's okay, no matter what happens, we can learn from that situation. We can take a step forward. So our mindset's there, whether you're aware of it or not. And the more aware of it you get, the more opportunity that you have to have an empowered mindset where you can take action forward and you can get through situations on your own and learn from them. And it's not to say you're not going to run into stuff or there's not going to be bad days, but it's just that time to get through it is that much faster.
Right. And you'll have the skills. So is it a learned skill then? It's something that, becoming aware and just making these practices, you can develop the muscle kind of and get better at it over time. Yeah.
100%. And it's interesting because I think, not to say that that's a new term by any means, but I think something that people are talking about more recently than they previously were. So for those that perhaps haven't looked into it before, it's not to say that you don't have a mindset about something. You're just not in tune with it perhaps yet. So it's just like you mentioned this, right? Just increasing your awareness and noticing. If you're not feeling good or you're having a rough day, just stopping. Like, what am I thinking about? What reoccurring thoughts are happening in my head? Sometimes journaling works for some people. I've even done like video journaling, or I'd take out my app on my phone and do a quick voice note.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the act of just getting it out, you can listen back and you're like, that's not true. Like, why am I bullying myself? It can be that quick of a shift. And I just want to offer that taking that empowered mindset, taking that empowered action forward is possible for everybody. We just need a little bit of time to get in tune with what that means for each of us in the first place.
Yeah. I like that. I like that little practice about recording and playing back, because like, if it's something that you wouldn't let somebody else say to you without being upset, right? Why would we let ourselves talk to ourselves that way? So that's an interesting little exercise. I like that very much. I was going to ask you if you have share with us a client success, like a before and after, just so people, I know people love stories and they remember stories, and it helps kind of solidify what the practice looks like.
And it's great timing for this question. I was just reviewing some of my previous clients and just looking at when they started, what they were feeling. And it's interesting because I can see myself in them. And I think for a lot of us, that's what happens. And it's primarily coming from a state of either stuck and or lost. Oh. So I know I want something else. There's usually an inkling for like, I know there's more that I can be doing. Right. So whatever that is, that definition is different for everyone, right? But there is that desire to want something else. And it's usually a state of like, I just don't know how to take that next step, where that is, what potentially I even want, like what that goal is that I'm working towards. I just know that I need some support in getting there. Yeah. So a lot of what we do from that is discovery work. And then it can be release work with that, right? So that being piece of, who do I want to be? Like, what kind of lifestyle does that person live? What kind of habits do they have? Figuring out what that goal part is in the first place. And then of course, there's a plan with that, right? You break that down as much as possible until it feels easy enough to start. And then we're looking at that whole, how can I physically take action for this? How strong am I mentally going to be in this situation? So all of that part is that real discovery phase. And then there's the doing. We can visualize and imagine as much as we want, but that does need to be coupled with that empowered action forward. And of course, then coming out of that, I think the thing that warms my heart more than anything is talking to a client after we finished a program and they just say, I feel like my life's together. Like I might not know exactly, like not to say that it's perfect either, but I'm not scared anymore. I know what that next step, perhaps it's on my career, perhaps it's with a relationship. They just feel more confident in those areas and they've taken progressive action forward as well.
So maybe they have more of a clearer end goal in mind and they're on that track now. And it sounds like you're giving them hope for that they can change where they are, and empowerment. Yes.
Exactly. And it is some milestones forward. And I love to set goals, by the way, that are getting clients really excited about their future. Right. So it's not always something that's achievable within 3 months, right? They're usually big visions. So it's something that's like, I'm really excited about this. I'm going to keep going with this. So my job is just to help them get started on those milestones so that they're able to continue on that path. And seeing those results like warms my heart.
Yeah, exactly. So you're holding the space and the belief for them until they can step into it and run with it.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm sure it is very rewarding. I completely understand that. I was going to ask questions for you. Sorry, excuse me while I check. I want to make sure we don't. Oh, yeah, important. So tell somebody what it looks like what indications of being burnt out would be. So I know we all go through the day stressed, so at what point do you know, like, okay, well, this is day-to-day stress, but this is actually burnout and I'm at risk here and I need to do something about it.
And I want anyone listening right now to take in that story I said at the beginning around when I was getting physical reactions in my body to a stressful overall situation. Yeah. So there was stress showing up. There was physical symptoms to that. So it was both physical and mental. And it was the consistency of how those were showing up. So it was, I was waking up with, and I'm just using my story as an example, because I think other people can relate to this. It's you're going to bed anxious and waking up anxious. So it's like nothing's happening per se in that situation. It's just a constant state that you don't know per se what's happening or how to get out of it.
Right.
So when that's happening, you really want to look at the consistency of how often it's been happening and how frequent. How many days has this been happening? How long has this been going on? Again, that definition is going to be a little bit different for everybody, but it really comes down to, is this situational or is this a state that I'm in?
A chronic thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. And so I'm sure that being in that position too impacts your sleep. And so if you're going to sleep anxious and you're waking up anxious and you're not resting well in the middle, then your body or your mind isn't really getting any recovery time. And so it seems like it kind of has a compounding effect unless you do something to break the cycle.
Exactly. And we're not robots. Like, we deserve to have peace in our life.
Exactly.
We deserve to be and just have enjoyment.
Right.
So many times we don't treat our bodies like that. I heard a quote recently of someone saying that we should be treating our bodies like you would a house that you're going to live in for 70 years at minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most of us don't. But that's how gentle we should be with our physical, mental, and emotional state in the first place. So sometimes it's as simple as tuning in or getting practices that work for you, whether that's a morning routine or some type of physical exercise, but staying with consistent or productive habits that serve you helps with that immensely.
Yeah, I can see definitely that would help. So that's something you would suggest for someone to, like, incorporating. Do you work with that part too? Like incorporating a little bit healthier diet and a little bit of exercise, like just everything they can do to start to flip the switch?
I look at it from a habit perspective because everything's a habit. And not to say that we have bad ones. I'd like to say they're unproductive ones and productive ones. Right. So we just want to look at what cycle's currently happening and how can we replace that with a better cycle. So I definitely look at that. I'm a strong believer of routines. I notice that for myself. If I'm not operating and showing up for myself, that's going to be the first way that I can start, is by creating space for myself before I'm consuming the world around me.
Yeah.
So a quick fix for that, if you don't have a routine and that's something you want to start, is just stop looking at your phone the first thing in the morning. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
As soon as I changed that, I was like, oh, your mind is just like settled and at peace, and you're not consuming the news or your emails or your text messages. It's like you get to choose your state first.
Exactly. Yeah, I stopped doing that a long time ago too. And another important habit is to turn off the social at least an hour before you lie down. So because, you're feeding your mind with all kinds of stuff that's not productive right before lying down too. So
there's
starting and ending the day at peace, right?
Oh yes. I put my phone on do not disturb. My apps are shut off from a certain point until I know that I'm like, okay, I'm at a good point to receive other information. So it's setting those parameters for yourself. And we're all allowed to do that. It's interesting how we feel this urge to respond to everyone right away.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know when that started. I for sure deal with that sometimes, but then I'm like, what am I doing? We don't need to operate like this.
Absolutely. And I've made, and that's, you totally described me. It just is all day long, but I have made some changes around that. And I think the people that are used to having me at the other end of the click, they've made adjustments and they understand, but I'm not as apt to pick it up every single time. I do have it on silent a lot of the day by choice. I think we might do a little aside here. You might be able to address this. I was actually hoping we could have a speaker speak on, I'm calling it digital detox, but you kind of touched on it. I think this whole screen time is a huge problem just for people in general. One, it's a waste of time. Two, the EMFs and all the blue light and everything just physically isn't the best, but just the extreme amount of time and what's being poured into your mind subconsciously isn't always positive. I don't know what we can do about it. I'd love to start a movement there where at least we're maybe talking to young people in schools about, just kind of break that habit, especially for them. They don't know any other way.
And it's so addicting. I think that's the scary piece. Like, how many of us are actually, I looked at my screen time the other day, and of course I'm a business owner, so there's parameters that I use that for online. It was terrifying though. I was like, am I actively working as much as I'm on my phone? No.
Right.
And I think it comes down to personal boundaries for ourselves. Like, what type of boundaries do you have around your cell phone or your iPad or your computer? Like, is it controlling you, or are you using this as a tool?
Exactly.
It's not to say that we have to remove it either. It's a tool. So how can we use it strategically and then have boundaries around that? And I think this whole exercise and talk with you is I really wanted to talk about as well as that balance piece. And that ties right into your devices and how you're using things. And balance also by definition is the idea that there's equal weight distribution. And I don't per se think work-life balance is 100% possible ever, just because if you look at, what chapter you're in your life, it might be more home that's prioritized. Other times it's work, and that's just how it is.
Yeah,
exactly. I think it really comes down to redefining that and looking at it like, how present am I being in a situation? So when I'm home, am I home? Or is my brain going on about everything to do with work? And likewise, the other way around, right? And same thing with your phone. If you're home all the time, and I caught myself doing this, if my relaxation is constantly scrolling, there's no balance in that. My brain's going constantly. There's no break. I'm not being present. I'm not actually talking to my husband. I'm like deep in a story about somebody that I don't know, sharing something on TikTok. It's crazy. It's very crazy. So it just starts with boundaries and actually looking at it like, where can I be more present?
Yeah. I love that. That's great, because you're right. It never will be a constant balance. So things are always changing, and life phases and this and that. And some are more demanding than others. And sometimes things aren't exactly like you want them to be. But you just look at, it's a moment in time, a little blip. And like you said, just do the best we can and stay present and stay positive if we can. Right.
And I always like to look at it like progress over perfection, because nothing has to be perfect. I always try to remind those around me or those that I'm working with that we're just looking at like, what's an ideal world that we want, or an ideal lifestyle, or an ideal routine that we're working towards.
Right.
But the key word is ideal and not perfect.
Yeah.
Like, we want to be able to flow with things. We want to be able to live and enjoy and, be flexible in that process.
So I think you're totally speaking to me on that one, the perfectionism thing. And I think that, I think the underlying thing is going back to, if I was sitting with a therapist or something, they would say it's the need for approval or not feeling worthy, or, everything has to be perfect wife, perfect mom, perfect daughter, perfect student, and so I can end up taking course after course after course after course and not yet take the action, because I know there's more to learn still. And I feel like I have to know it all before I implement anything. But I'm been working on that too and getting better at that. But those are things that that's self-imposed too.
And I think we're taught some of that from schooling. I do think that we are taught with this idea, it's like a report card syndrome is something that we've coined or called it, but it's that idea that I constantly need more information in this like library of knowledge that I have. But then it comes, okay, what are we actually doing? Like, is there a gap between what we know and the actions we're taking? Probably.
Yeah.
So I love to take, even if it's one piece or little nugget of information that you then put into action, all of a sudden that's how you get to the next level. It doesn't have to be perfecting it. It's just taking a little bit at a time and adding to that as you go.
Right. So we're changing the topic just a little bit, but that it's so good. You're so good at what you do. So that reminds me of the quote too about, your freedom is on the other side of fear. And so I think part of the perfectionism thing is a fear thing. Like, you're afraid you're going to mess up or something, don't know enough or whatever. So like, coach somebody through that.
The workbook I have for this, by the way, actually helps with that. I did it myself today. For me, it was showing up as overwhelm. For you, it could be showing up as fear, right? So it tends to be fear. Fear is a good one, actually, that you're resonating with, because that's deeper in the sort of wheel of emotions. Whereas overwhelm's a little higher up. So I had to do some unpeeling of where's that overwhelm actually showing up? How many areas is that showing up? And fear, the quickest way out of that is actually action.
Exactly.
Because we're so scared to take something. So sometimes a great tool for that is just, you want to break down all the steps that are around that thing that you're afraid to do until there's one step that's so small that it's almost a no-brainer.
Right.
Where you're just like, okay, obviously I can do that. It's going to take 45 seconds. I can complete it right now. And that's a win. And the biggest thing is tracking those wins. Every time you do something, and I almost want everyone to remember this, a win, there's no size to a win. No matter how big or how small, something I do is I track those things. Anytime I felt afraid and I still did the thing, I write that down on a list.
Yeah, so celebrate wins.
Oh yeah, and you got to be your own cheerleader. I have a folder in my inbox if I get great client feedback from somebody. I surround feel good things around me so that you can, keep up your energy and feel good along the way. That's the biggest thing.
That's great. So my last question, I hate that we are coming to the end. My last question is always if you could give people simple action steps, but I feel like you really have a couple that you've already given us that are really great, practical, easy things. They're free. People can do them at home and really start to see some positive results pretty quickly. Yes.
And these are some great starters. And that's why, again, I love that you're doing the summit, because I think you're offering to people starting points. And I want to remind everyone of this. Like, when I felt at my worst, at that moment when I didn't feel fulfilled in my career, felt like anxiety was ruling my life, I didn't know where to start. And I started feeling like, oh, I need to follow this guru in this field and, absorb all this information from other people. And as much as that's great, especially looking at a coach or a therapist, right? It's great to work with someone that's going to guide you. But I just want everyone to remember that you do have answers within, and it's okay to trust yourself. And I think some of these tools, in terms of the easy application of this, is starting points that you can apply right now.
Yeah.
So the tool that I have in here is going to help you do that. I actually, again, the Feel Good Roadmap, went through it this morning.
Is this the gift that you're giving the listeners? I want to put that title up and tell them about that, because that's perfect.
So it's a 4-step process. This isn't just a one-time thing. I myself go back to this because it's outlined in a way that if I'm feeling any negative emotion, whether that's burnout, overwhelm, anxiety, stress, guilt, anything, I can go through these 4 steps and come to some type of, whether it's a solution or at least next step by the end of it, on my own. So I really felt called to share this one because I do think it's a fantastic start as a solution to get some type of action in place. And it helps you uncover what's showing up. Where is this showing up? So what's the emotion showing up? Where is it showing up in my life? And that's going to, again, be spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. And then you're going to take an inventory of your life. So what's interesting in that component is, I personally found from doing this exercise this morning, it wasn't the area I thought that it was initially. So I realized, oh my goodness, it's actually my physical health that's affecting my career because I'm not prioritizing things that make me personally feel good. So it's a process to help you walk through this on your own so that you can actually write out what's not working, release it at the end, do a self-forgiveness mantra with that, and then figure out your best next step. And you want to repeat this cycle until you notice a mental shift.
Nice.
It's nice and easy, nice and simple. And it's an incredible go-to resource.
And it sounds very effective. And I know a lot of people are going to take advantage of that. I really appreciate it. It's very generous.
Of course.
And I love it that it's something that you are still practicing yourself, even this morning. So that's awesome. And I want to let people know that the link to access the gift will be below the video. So
perfect.
Well, Jaclyn, thank you so much. I hate that we have to say goodbye. I love everything you've shared with us. So many great things and practical things. And I love that you, like everyone, we're giving hope and we're giving practical steps. And we're just really encouraging people to, learn and, as you would say, be and do and have, right?
And I really want to leave, of course. I wish we could keep going. I really want to leave everyone know that's listening, just with the understanding that you are capable of whatever you want to be achieving in your life. You can be, do, and have the life that you want. And all of that growth is 100% possible for you.
Yes.
So I hope this fills your cup, and that's it. Just thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing with us. You have a great day.